to share with you a story about how I accidentally became the villain of a massively online game in real life.
It was a story she is telling. So a story does not have to be true, actually.
Community.
How do you feel about video games?
I still love them. I think games are really where we're going.
Video games are so interesting and engaging and interactive. I'm a gamer and I enjoy games. I love games. I'm a fan of games. I'm a gamer and I enjoy games. I love games. I'm a fan of games.
I'm going to show you a remix that I just finished this weekend and no one else has seen. One person has seen it. It's a soundtrack of one song, except I'm doing video games. So it's not exactly a fandom. I'm not a fan of video games. I actually had to learn a lot about video games in the process of making this. I don't want to go around shooting people and ripping off their heads, and it's just gross.
I'm a fan of games.
I'm not a fan of video games.
I'm a fan of games.
I'm not a fan of video games.
I'm a fan of games.
I'm not a fan of video games.
For the past 4 years, I've been running a video web series on YouTube called Feminist Frequency, where I deconstruct the representations of women in the media. I try to provide the tools to give people the language to talk about sexism and issues of gender using accessible language from popular culture, such as TV shows, movies, comic books, and video games. Now, video games are really interesting because it's actually the fastest growing form of mass media today.
She says it herself that video games are really interesting because they are the fastest growing form of media today. And not because she likes them so much.
This is a photo of me at age 10 playing Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo. So I've been playing games for quite a while. And in addition to being a lot of fun to play, games have lots of positive benefits as well. So again,
No, I don't think Anita Sarkeesian is a fan of video games as a whole. She might be a fan of certain types of video games, but that's all. She's not a fan of video games as a whole, and she can't accept video games as they are.
I've been playing games for a while, but there's something that's always kind of bothered me. It is no secret that the video game industry boasts some of the most sexually objectified, stereotyped, and downright oppressive portrayals of women in any medium.
Here is an example what she means by that from Feminist Frequency.
Come on.
And of course she's lost her memories, and there's some evil demon horde, and there's a magical gem of the world, something, and so forth. But all of that is besides the point when it comes to this game. First, the positive things about the game. She's a single mother, and that's kind of it. So on to the negatives. She carries with her 4 pistols, 2 of which are strapped to her high-heeled boots, which provide the perfect opportunity for her to contort her body into pornographic poses, including spreading her legs and doing a little flip in the air to kill the bad guys. When she lands, she does a little sexy pose for the player, complete with the sound of a camera shutter snapping. But it gets even better, because one of her most powerful weapons involves her stripping all her clothes off and turning her hair into an evil demon weapon fighting machine. Did you get that? The whole taking all her clothes off in order to use her hair as a weapon? Because clearly you can't use your hair to drag demons down to hell if you're fully clothed.
The only good thing about this game is that Bayonetta is a single mother. A bad thing about this game is that Bayonetta is doing a lot of pornographic poses. Could you not see them? Are you blind? I could clearly see them. They are all to find on Rule 34.
Predictably, the internet is now infested with gamers' screen captures of the various ways that they got Bayonetta naked. As if this pornographic, overly sexualized, animated representation isn't bad enough, the way that Bayonetta restores her power is by sucking on a lollipop. But I'm not really here to discuss the overly sexualized adolescent male fantasy that Bayonetta is, but rather talk about part of the game's marketing strategy. To advertise the release of the game, its marketing company placed 2 6-foot-long banners in Shinjuku Station in Tokyo. This ad featured the Bayonetta logo with a large rectangular space filled with small cards that enticed passers-by to peel them off and take them home. The cards had a lipstick kiss on the front and Bayonetta's gun-strapped leg on the inside. Once a few of these cards were removed, it was clear that Bayonetta was lying naked underneath. She only had her hair wrapped around her body to cover up her naughty bits. Yes, that's right, not only is the game created to and encourages players to undress her during gameplay, because it's basically a choose-your-own patriarchal adventure porno fantasy, but now the advertisers are inviting passersby to physically strip her naked in the subway station. Instead of being at least a little bit outraged by this, bloggers all over the internet were celebrating this as an innovative and successful ad campaign. Women's bodies are constantly used to...
On the one hand, it might be right that women were objectified in recent decades by the advertisement companies, but Bayonetta as a porno fantasy? I don't know, man. I don't know. When you see Bayonetta as a porno fantasy, you also have to see the birth of Venice as some kind of porn. Women can be objectified, okay, but can video game characters also be objectified? They don't even really exist. Anita Sarkeesian, do you know that Bayonetta as a character does not really exist? And that she was designed, by the way, by a female?
So with that in mind, I decided to launch a fundraising campaign on the crowdfunding website Kickstarter, where I would create a series of videos to look specifically at the way women are represented in video games. The idea being that if you were interested in the project, you could donate, and if you weren't interested, you could choose not to donate.
What Anita Sarkeesian is speaking about, so oppressive, objectified representation of women, we have already seen at Bayonetta. The Kickstarter campaign of Anita Sarkeesian sounds fair, but I don't know how much of oppression was behind the Kickstarter campaign. Because not only men can be oppressive, women can also be oppressive. Women can also manipulate very well. They are playing the victim, for example.
It's pretty straightforward, right? I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Yeah. Turns out that there are a bunch of male gamers out there who were, shall we say, not too excited about this project. Now, I'm a pop culture critic, I am a feminist, and I'm a woman. And I'm all of these things openly on the internet. So I'm no stranger to some level of sexist backlash. I've sadly gotten used to sexist slurs and sexist insults, usually involving kitchens and sandwiches. But what happened this time was a little bit different. I found myself the target of a massive online hate campaign. Now, the next couple of slides represent just a tiny fraction of the harassment I received, and they come with a very large trigger warning. All of my social media sites were flooded with threats of rape, violence, sexual assault, death, and you'll notice that these threats and comments were all specifically targeting my gender. The Wikipedia article about me was vandalized with sexism, racism, and pornographic images. There was a campaign to report all of my social media accounts, including my Kickstarter, my YouTube, my Twitter, and they would report them as fraud, as spam, even as terrorism, in an effort to get them suspended. They attempted to knock my website offline, hack into my email and other accounts. They attempted to collect and distribute my personal information, including my home address and phone number. There were images made, pornographic images made in my likeness being raped by video game characters and sent to me again and again. There was even a game made where players were invited to beat the bitch up, in which, upon clicking on the screen, an image of me would become increasingly battered and bruised. You get the point, we'll move on. What's even more disturbing, if that's even possible, than this overt display of misogyny on a grand scale, is that the perpetrators openly referred to this harassment campaign and their abuse as a game.
A campaign is something planned and organized. How exactly was it organized? By whom? Where? Please give me some facts. Please give me proof. Please give some evidence. I don't know if it was planned or not. I just want some evidence. Otherwise, it sounds exactly like a conspiracy theory.
They referred to their abuse as a game. So, in their minds, they concocted this grand fiction in which they're the heroic players of a massively multiplayer online game working together to take down an enemy. And apparently they casted me in the role of the villain. And what was my big diabolical master plan? To make a series of videos on YouTube about women's representations in games. Yeah. So, if they think of their abuse as a fun game, then let's examine this. Who are the players? Well, often when we talk about online harassment, we think of teenage boys in their parents' basements. And while I was attacked by some teenage boys, I was also attacked by thousands of grown men.
I was attacked by grown men. How does Anita Sarkeesian know that? By whom she was attacked? How does she know how old each and every one of them was? How many thousands have it been? How many? She might have faced some online harassment, yes, but I think she is exaggerating. And while I know that there are some men out there who think that rape threats online sent are funny, I don't agree with them. If she has faced harassment from, let's say, 1,000 individuals, that is bad, but that does nothing say about hundreds of millions of gamers out there. You can pick any group of people and find some idiots within them. Say, for example, a truck driver, or let's say smokers. Yes, let's say car drivers. You find them everywhere. Gamers are such an easy target because they are often online, and online people are behaving differently than in real life. And I still don't know how many of the threats were written by Anita Sarkeesian herself.
And this isn't entirely surprising considering the average age of the male gamer in the US is about 30. Where is this game played? Well, the perpetrators turned the entire internet into a battlefield. So in my case, they came after everything and anything that I possibly had ever had online. They also have a home base where they coordinate their raids and work together and communicate. And this usually takes place on largely unmoderated, largely anonymous message boards and forums. And these are places with no real mechanisms for accountability.
Again, what evidence is there? Show us the evidence. If you had evidence for that, I think you already would have shown us the evidence. If they are not moderated, then how do you know about them? Was there like a spy within them? That sounds again like a conspiracy theory. Maybe in fact just everyone hates Anita Sarkeesian.
So what is the goal? Well, the immediate explicit goal is to stop the villain and save video games from me and my crazy feminist schemes. And they tried to do this by silencing and discrediting me and my project. But the larger implicit goal here is that they're actually trying to maintain the status quo of video games as a male-dominated space, and all of the privileges and entitlements that come with an unquestioned boys' club.
Video games were never an unquestioned boys' club. There were always women working on video games, like, for example, composers, artists. There were females working on video games as designers, as writers, as story writers, sometimes also as programmers. On the other hand, the fan base is predominantly male. I don't see why the developers should not be male. What kind of female knows exactly what males want? What kind of games do females want? Is it the same kind of games that boys want? Probably not. And the kind of transfer that Anita Sarkeesian is wanting here is not inclusion, it is exclusion. Because all the time there were women working in the industry. It was just that males were more interested in video games. And now the industry is doing the trick and saying, yeah, girls are also interested in video games because they are playing Farmville or playing some kind of other casual game, like, for example, Bubble Shooter. But if the industry is now thinking, this is what our new audience wants, no, this is not what the audience wants. This is what a specific part of the audience wants. This is not what the majority of the audience wants. And this is one of the reasons why modern games are not meeting the taste of the majority of the audience.
What happened to me, and sadly to other women as well, can best be described as a cyber mob. And whether it's a cyber mob or a handful of hateful comments,
this part can also be understood that it doesn't really matter if it was just a handful of hateful comments or a giant attack. So it could also have been a handful of hateful comments that Anita Sarkeesian had encountered.
the end result is maintaining and reinforcing and normalizing a culture of sexism, where men who harass are supported by their peers and rewarded for their sexist attitudes and behaviors, and where women are silenced, marginalized, and excluded from full participation. A boys' club means no girls allowed. And how do they keep women and girls out? Just like this, by creating an environment that is too toxic and hostile to endure.
Now I would be interested in some of the examples. What exactly does she mean by toxic? What exactly? Give me some example. For example, I don't know, Blizzard? Or what does she mean by toxic? And that it was just a boys' club and no women were allowed is complete and utter nonsense. Because I know of women that were already working in the industry in the 90s. There just have not been any women quotas or quotas for non-binary folks or for trans folks or for whomever. They were just good, and this is why the industry took them. They were good at their job.
Now, this is pretty grim and depressing stuff, I know, but there is another side to all of this. Do you want to know what happened to my fundraiser after all of that? Well, first, the cyber mob failed to silence me, as is evidenced by me being here today. Thank you. And it turns out that quite a few people are actually interested in a project that would deconstruct the representations of women in games, and who are totally outraged at the harassment that too often plagues our gaming communities.
With the help of some amazing mentors and by reading a lot of feminist writing, especially the words of women of color and queer women from around the world, I learned to see through a sociological lens and understand the world as it really exists, as a series of intersecting social systems. Once you have a systemic and institutional framework, you see how oppression manifests in many subtle ways under the systems of what Bell Hooks calls white supremacist capitalist patriarchy.
You had to learn about the sociology of systems and structural change. Absolutely. And That was obviously quite a journey for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I sort of joke about how it was the most liberating thing that ever happened to me, and also the most frustrating for everyone around me. Because like when you start learning about systems, everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you have to point it all out to everyone all